Hello, everyone. Have you ever wanted to start something important in your life? A project you dream about, learning a new language, starting a diet or a fitness routine? But when the moment comes to actually do it, you feel a heaviness, a resistance, and you tell yourself, it's okay, I'll start tomorrow. And that tomorrow never seems to arrive. This feeling of fear, doubt, and constant procrastination is something we all know. But in his brilliant book, The War of Art, author Steven Pressfield tells us that this force holding you back is not you. It's not part of your personality. He calls it a universal and invisible enemy named resistance. In this video, we're going to expose the nature of this enemy, how it works, and give you the battle plan to defeat it, which is to shift from the mindset of an amateur to the mindset of a professional. Stay with me, because these ideas have the power to change your relationship with work and creativity forever. Introduction: the universal enemy of creation. Steven Pressfield is a novelist who, after a grueling 17-year period of struggle marked by a series of disparate jobs, from advertising copywriter to tractor-trailer driver to attendant in a mental hospital, finally achieved literary success. In 2002, he distilled the lessons of his arduous journey into The War of Art, a book that is less a conventional self-help manual and more a bracing manifesto. Described by readers and critics as a kick in the ass and a vital gem, it has been hailed as a modern-day Sun Tzu for the soul. Since its publication, the book has cultivated a devoted, almost cult-like following that spans a remarkably diverse audience. It is a touchstone for writers, painters, dancers, and actors, but its reach extends to business entrepreneurs, military service members, and thousands of others who find its message universally applicable. Many of these devotees treat the book as a perpetual source of reinforcement, opening it to any page to receive the jolt of motivation needed to get back to their work. The central premise of The War of Art is both simple and profound. The primary obstacle to any creative or high-aspiration endeavor is not a lack of talent, resources, or opportunity, but rather an internal, universal, and malevolent force that Pressfield personifies as resistance. The book is methodically structured into 3 distinct parts, forming a comprehensive battle plan. Book 1 is dedicated to defining this shadowy enemy, outlining its characteristics and insidious tactics. Book 2 presents the singular strategy for its defeat, the conscious decision to abandon the amateur mindset and turn pro. Book 3 ventures into more controversial territory, exploring the transcendent and spiritual source of creative power that victory in this inner war purportedly unlocks. This report will navigate what is a uniquely polarizing text. While countless readers consider The War of Art to be a transformative guide that has put them on a better path, the book is also the subject of significant criticism. It has been condemned for its absolutist and judgmental tone, its embrace of woo-woo spiritualism, and, most seriously, its inclusion of unsubstantiated and potentially harmful psychological and medical claims. The following analysis will therefore adopt a balanced approach, seeking to unpack the book's undeniable power and utility while simultaneously equipping the reader to critically evaluate and navigate its significant flaws. The objective is to provide a complete understanding of why this short book has had such a lasting impact, and how its potent ideas can be wielded effectively and responsibly.
Part 1. Defining the Enemy, a deep dive into resistance. The nature and psychology of resistance. At the heart of Pressfield's philosophy is the concept of resistance, an omnipresent force that obstructs the creative process. He defines it not as a personal mood or a character flaw, but as a universal, impersonal, and negative repelling force. It is an energy field that radiates from any work in potential. This force arises whenever an individual attempts to move from a lower sphere of existence to a higher one. In essence, any act that rejects immediate gratification in favor of long-term growth, health, or integrity. This includes not only artistic pursuits, like writing a novel or painting a masterpiece, but also launching an entrepreneurial venture, embarking on a spiritual practice, or committing to a diet or fitness regimen. Pressfield explicitly connects this concept to Freudian psychology, labeling resistance as his all-encompassing term for what Sigmund Freud called the death wish, a destructive, self-sabotaging force inherent in human nature. The true psychological power of Pressfield's framework lies in a crucial mental maneuver. He repeatedly states that resistance is internal. It is the enemy within, self-generated and self-perpetuated. Yet by giving this internal feeling a name and personifying it as a distinct, third-party antagonist, he offers a profound mind shift that readers find enormously beneficial. This act of externalization fundamentally reframes the creative struggle. When a creator experiences procrastination, fear, or self-doubt, the default tendency is to internalize these feelings as a character defect. I am lazy, I am a coward, or I am not good enough. This self-blame reinforces the negative state, creating a debilitating downward spiral of shame and inaction. Pressfield's model interrupts this destructive cycle. By labeling the obstructive force resistance, he allows the creator to cease blaming themselves. The internal monologue shifts from a question of identity, what is wrong with me, to a question of strategy, how do I fight it? This transformation from a state of personal shame into a state of strategic engagement is psychologically empowering and is a primary reason for the book's enduring effectiveness. The battle is no longer against oneself, but against a named external foe. The Manifold Faces of Resistance, a Rogue's Gallery. Pressfield presents resistance as a cunning and insidious enemy, a shapeshifter that will assume any form necessary to prevent an individual from doing their work. He dedicates a significant portion of the book to identifying its greatest hits, a rogue's gallery of its most common and effective manifestations. The most common form is procrastination, which Pressfield deems pernicious because it is the easiest to rationalize. Resistance rarely confronts us with an absolute refusal. Instead, it whispers the logic of delay. We do not tell ourselves, I'm never going to write my symphony. We say, I am going to write my symphony, I'm just going to start tomorrow. This seemingly minor postponement, when repeated, can become a lifelong habit, causing us to put off our lives until our deathbed. Resistance is most often experienced as fear and self-doubt. Pressfield posits a direct correlation. The degree of fear one feels about an enterprise is equivalent to the strength of the resistance against it. This fear manifests in a variety of ways, including crippling self-doubt, the feeling of being an imposter, and the pervasive "I'm not ready" mentality that keeps one in a perpetual state of preparation without ever beginning. To support these feelings, resistance employs endless rationalization and excuses. Pressfield bluntly states that resistance is full of shit and will tell you anything using seemingly logical arguments to keep you from your work. This can range from convincing you that you need more research, better equipment, or a different environment, to fabricating urgent but unimportant tasks that must be done first. These fabricated tasks often take the form of distractions and productive avoidance. Resistance fuels the impulse to engage in secondary activities that feel like work but are in fact sophisticated forms of avoidance. Pressfield cynically refers to creative workshops and seminars as colleges of resistance, places where aspiring artists gather to talk about the work instead of doing it. Similarly, the sudden urge to deep clean the entire house right when it's time to write is a classic manifestation of resistance at work. When more direct tactics fail, resistance can resort to psychological manipulation, such as fostering a sense of victimhood and self-dramatization. Pressfield identifies the victim act as a form of passive aggression. It is an attempt to achieve gratification not through the honest labor of creation, but by manipulating the sympathy and actions of others through silent or overt threats of personal collapse. And finally, resistance can masquerade as high standards through perfectionism and grandiose fantasies. The amateur creator often believes they must first conquer their fear, or that their work must be perfect from the outset, both of which are paralyzing beliefs fueled by resistance. Indulging in grandiose fantasies about future success and acclaim is another symptom. It is a pleasant distraction that keeps the creator from the mundane, difficult, and essential task of actually doing the work.
In one of its most disturbing forms, resistance can even infiltrate and distort love, support, and relationships. Pressfield cautions that this force can disfigure love. An individual succumbing to resistance might unconsciously choose a partner who is successfully battling their own creative demons, hoping to live vicariously through them rather than facing their own calling. Conversely, a person might find themselves in a relationship with a supportive partner who, out of their own fear and resistance, subtly enables inaction and sabotages genuine progress. Resistance as a compass. While resistance is presented as the primary antagonist, Pressfield introduces a powerful and counterintuitive concept. This enemy can be used as a navigational tool. He argues that resistance, in its unfailing opposition to our growth, acts as a compass pointing directly toward our life's most important work. The core of this idea is that resistance is an infallible indicator. Pressfield posits that the force is not random, it is infallible in its ability to detect what matters most to us. It will unfailingly point to true north, that specific calling or action that is most essential for our soul's evolution. The rule of thumb is simple and direct. The more important a call or action is to our soul's evolution, the more resistance we will feel toward pursuing it. This principle allows one to weaponize the enemy's own signal. The logic establishes a clear causal chain. A project's profound importance to one's personal growth generates intense fear of failure, which in turn manifests as powerful resistance. The brilliance of Pressfield's model is that it teaches the creator to reverse this chain for diagnostic purposes. When an individual feels an overwhelming sense of fear, a paralyzing anxiety, or an almost physical repulsion from a specific project, the conventional interpretation is that this is a signal to stop or retreat. The Pressfield model instructs the opposite. This intense negative feeling should be interpreted as a clear and reliable signal of the project's profound importance. The fear itself becomes the very reason to proceed. In this way, the most debilitating symptom of resistance, paralyzing fear, is transformed into a powerful motivator and an indispensable compass for prioritizing one's life's work. The social contagion of resistance. Pressfield makes it clear that the war of art is not a purely solitary battle. Resistance, once it has taken root within an individual, has the capacity to recruit allies and manifest in the social sphere. When an individual begins to successfully overcome their own resistance, when they start the business, write the book, or lose the weight, it can make those around them who are still succumbing to their own internal foes deeply uncomfortable. One person's victory becomes a silent reproach to another's inaction. This dynamic is a well-known social phenomenon recognized by names such as tall poppy syndrome or crab mentality, where the group attempts to pull down any individual who tries to rise above the rest. A key part of the creative battle, therefore, is learning to recognize this externalized resistance for what it is, and refusing to let the criticism of others fortify the enemy that is already raging within one's own head.
Part 2. The Path to Victory. Forging the Professional. The amateur versus the professional, a foundational dichotomy. After exhaustively defining the enemy, Pressfield presents his solution to defeating resistance, the conscious, deliberate decision to turn pro. This concept is the strategic core of the book. The distinction between the amateur and the professional, in Pressfield's view, has little to do with money, fame, or external validation. It is a fundamental and decisive shift in mindset, commitment, and identity. The amateur's mindset is defined by its passivity and fragility. The amateur works part-time, not just in hours, but in spirit. They wait for inspiration to strike before they begin their work, making their creative life dependent on unpredictable moods and fleeting feelings. The amateur over-identifies with their work. Their sense of self is fused with their creative output, which makes them terrified of criticism and rejection, often leading to paralysis. They operate under the false belief that they must first overcome their fear before they can act, a condition that is never met. Because of this mindset, the amateur is easily derailed by the slightest pushback from resistance. In stark contrast, the professional's mindset is defined by intention and resilience. The professional plays for keeps, approaching their art not as a hobby, but as a true vocation. The cornerstone of their practice is the commitment to show up every day and do the work, regardless of how they feel, inspired or uninspired, confident or terrified. The professional understands that fear is a permanent part of the territory and can never be fully overcome. Therefore, they learn to act in the face of it. Instead of waiting for inspiration, the professional creates the habits, routines, and conditions that allow them to catch it when it arrives. The professional's code, a framework for action. Pressfield outlines a clear and actionable code of conduct, a set of specific qualities and habits that define the professional and serve as a practical framework for combating resistance. The foundational principle is that the professional shows up daily. This is non-negotiable. Whether sick or healthy, motivated or depressed, the pro is at their post, ready to work. This simple, consistent act is the primary weapon against resistance. The professional is patient and committed for the long haul. They understand that a significant creative endeavor is not a sprint, but a marathon. At the start of a project, the pro steels himself, reminding himself it is the Iditarod, not the 60-yard dash, conserving energy and preparing his mind for a sustained effort. The professional is dedicated to the craft and relentlessly works to master technique. They focus on the how of their work, leaving the what and why to the gods. This means that their style is not a form of grandstanding, but a tool that serves the material itself. This dedication to craft provides a solid, practical foundation that is independent of the whims of inspiration. To facilitate this focus, the professional seeks order. They understand that a chaotic external environment breeds a chaotic mind. The pro methodically eliminates chaos from his world in order to banish it from his mind, creating a structured and stable space that is conducive to deep work. A core tenet of the professional's code is to accept no excuses. The pro understands the insidious nature of resistance and knows that caving in to an excuse today makes it twice as likely that they will cave in tomorrow. They hold themselves accountable. This accountability requires that the pro act in the face of fear. They accept fear as a constant companion on the creative journey. They do not wait for it to disappear. They learn to function and produce high-quality work despite its presence. Finally, the pro plays it as it lays. This means they operate in the real world as it actually is, not as they wish it to be. They accept the conditions of the day, good or bad, and aim not necessarily for a perfect victory, but to handle themselves and their work as sturdily as possible under the given circumstances. The psychological shift to professionalism. The transition from amateur to professional is more than a change in habits. It is a profound psychological transformation centered on the management of the ego. The first critical shift is towards ego detachment.
The professional learns to strategically separate their core identity from the work they produce. They consciously choose to seat their professional consciousness in a place other than their personal ego. This is the quality that gives an artist a thick skin. It is not that they are numb or dense. Rather, they have made a strategic decision not to take rejection or success personally. The work is something they do, not something they are. This detachment enables the development of an internal locus of validation. Because their self-worth is no longer tied directly to the outcome of their work, the professional can self-validate. They develop the capacity to assess their own work coldly and objectively. They can identify where it fell short and improve it, or where it triumphed and build upon it, without needing the external validation of praise or being destroyed by the external judgment of criticism. This process represents a form of identity alchemy, which is perhaps the deepest psychological transformation the book advocates. The amateur's identity is fused with their creative output. As a result, any criticism of the work is perceived as a direct and devastating attack on their fundamental self-worth, a terrifying prospect that leads to paralysis. The professional, by contrast, performs a kind of psychological surgery. They bifurcate their identity into two distinct entities: the personal self, the ego, which feels fear, craves validation, and is vulnerable to hurt, and the professional self, the disciplined, dispassionate entity that simply shows up every day and does the work. By consciously choosing to operate from this professional self during work hours, they create a crucial psychological buffer. Rejection can no longer deliver a mortal wound to their core identity because, as Pressfield states, the work is not her.
Table 1. A comparative framework of the amateur versus the professional. To crystallize these concepts, the following table provides a direct comparison of the amateur and professional mindsets across several key attributes. This framework serves as a diagnostic tool for any creator to self-assess their own behaviors and identify the specific mental shifts required to turn pro. Attribute: the amateur. The professional. Motivation: waits for inspiration to strike. Shows up every day regardless of mood or inspiration. Relationship to fear: believes fear must be overcome before starting. Acts in the face of fear, knowing it is a constant. Time orientation: plays for the weekend, a part-time mindset. Plays for keeps, treats the craft as a full-time vocation. Source of validation: seeks external validation, crushed by criticism. Self-validates: learns from criticism but is not defined by it. Identity: I am my work. Ego is fused with the work. The work is not me. Ego is detached from the work. View of work: a hobby, a dream, an extension of identity. A job, a craft to be mastered through discipline. View of failure: takes failure personally, sees it as a sign to quit. Views failure as an impersonal, necessary part of the process. Environment: tolerates or is consumed by chaos. Actively creates order to facilitate focus. Part 3. Beyond the battle, the higher realm and its controversies. Invoking the muse, the spiritual dimension of creativity. In the third and final section of the book, Pressfield makes a dramatic pivot from the practical, psychological battlefield of the first two parts to a metaphysical and spiritual plane. This section, titled Beyond Resistance, the Higher Realm, is by far the most controversial and is where the author lays out his personal beliefs about the ultimate source of creative power. Pressfield posits that true inspiration does not originate from within the artist, but descends from a higher realm populated by muses,
angels, and a divine transcendent force. He expresses a belief that great works of art, books, music, paintings, exist in some platonic, pre-material form and are propelled into material being by their own imperative to be born, through the artist who is willing to serve as a conduit. He reclaims the ancient Roman concept of genius, arguing that its original meaning has been lost. For Pressfield, genius is not a measure of individual talent or IQ, but refers to an inner spirit, a holy, inviolable daimon or guardian angel that resides within each person, guiding them toward their unique calling. Everyone possesses this genius, but it can only be accessed by defeating resistance. Within this framework, the role of the artist is not to generate ideas, but to become a willing servant of discipline, imagination, and inspiration. The professional's job is to show up to the work every single day, thereby creating a disciplined, ordered space into which the muse can descend and inspiration can flow. When the professional sits down to do their work, Pressfield argues, power concentrates around us. We become like a magnetized rod that attracts iron filings. Ideas come, insights accrete. A critical analysis of the higher realm. The spiritual turn in Book 3 is the most frequent and significant point of criticism leveled against the war of art. For many readers, the shift is jarring and undermines the credibility established in the earlier sections. The most common complaint is the abrupt tonal shift. Reviewers consistently note that Book 3 feels like a passage out of a different book. The first two parts are grounded in a relatable, albeit tough-minded, psychological reality. The advice to show up, be disciplined, and manage fear is practical and universally applicable. The sudden introduction of angels, muses, and a divine realm feels like a non sequitur, leaving many readers feeling confused, as if they missed something that might have explained the tone switch. This has led to the book being described as having a not-so-good ending. This metaphysical discourse inevitably risks alienating the secular reader. The explicit discussion of angels and a divine source of creativity can be off-putting for readers who are atheistic, agnostic, or simply prefer a more scientific or purely psychological framework for understanding creativity. The woo-woo elements are often cited as a major flaw, with some critics going so far as to advise readers to simply read the first two parts and skip the last one entirely, judging it not worth it. Interpreting the metaphor, beyond literal belief. While the literal interpretation of Book 3 is problematic for many, its inclusion can be understood from a more functional, metaphorical perspective. The question becomes not whether Pressfield's spiritual beliefs are true, but what psychological purpose they serve within his system for combating resistance. Resistance is framed as a powerful, universal, and toxic force that actively seeks the destruction of our creative spirit. It is the root of more unhappiness than poverty, disease, and erectile dysfunction. To effectively combat such a formidable negative force, an equally powerful positive force is required. By framing the creative act not merely as a job or a personal project, but as a sacred duty, a collaboration with the divine, be it muses, angels, or God, Pressfield imbues the mundane act of showing up with profound, transcendent significance. This sacralization of the work serves a crucial strategic purpose. It dramatically raises the stakes of the battle. The creator is no longer just fighting off a bout of procrastination, they are answering a divine call, honoring their inner genius, and delivering a unique and priceless gift to the world that only they can provide. This spiritual framework provides a powerful, motivating why that can help a creator endure the difficult, often grueling part of the creative process. Viewed through this lens, the higher realm can be interpreted as a powerful psychological tool
or a functional metaphor. It can represent the mysterious workings of the unconscious mind, an interpretation favored by Robert McKee, who wrote the book's foreword, the ecstatic state of creative flow, or simply the profound weight of one's own untapped potential. This interpretation allows the reader to harness the motivational power of Pressfield's spiritual framework regardless of their personal theological beliefs. Part 4. A critical evaluation and contextualization. The book's strengths and enduring appeal. Despite its flaws, The War of Art has remained a perennial favorite for 2 decades because its core message is undeniably potent and its central tools are highly effective. Its primary and most celebrated strength is its potent motivational power. It is consistently described as a kick in the ass that provides a dose of no-nonsense, tough-love encouragement. For any creator struggling with the inertia of a blank page or an empty canvas, the book's direct and confrontational style serves as a powerful call to action, inspiring the discipline and resolve needed to begin. The book's most significant conceptual contribution is the clarity of personification. The simple act of naming the internal enemy, resistance, is repeatedly cited by readers as its most transformative and beneficial idea. This externalization allows individuals to reframe their struggles with procrastination and self-doubt not as personal failings but as battles against a tangible foe, which is a more empowering and less shame-inducing psychological position. Finally, the call to professionalism provides a clear and actionable roadmap for anyone serious about their craft. The sharp, unambiguous distinction between the amateur and the professional and the detailed code of conduct for the latter resonates deeply with those who wish to move their creative pursuits from the realm of hobbies to the center of their lives. The book's weaknesses and points of contention. The very qualities that make the book powerful for some make it problematic for others. Its weaknesses are significant and warrant careful consideration. The most pervasive criticism is its absolutist and judgmental tone. The book's warlike metaphor and black-and-white thinking can come across as self-righteous, dictatorial, and even bullying. This extremist viewpoint leaves no room for nuance. It fails to acknowledge that hesitation can sometimes be a form of good judgment rather than a manifestation of resistance, or that a balanced life that includes family and other commitments is not necessarily a sign of amateurism.
Comparative analysis is useful to compare it with other key texts that address similar challenges. To fully understand the book's place in the literature of creativity, it is useful to compare it with other key texts that address similar challenges. Versus Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. A comparison with Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way reveals 2 fundamentally different, almost polar opposite philosophies for unblocking creativity. Contrasting philosophies. The War of Art embodies a masculine, confrontational, kick-in-the-rear approach. Its language is militaristic. Its focus is on defeating an enemy, and its goal is the disciplined production of work. In contrast, The Artist's Way employs a feminine, nurturing, gentle, and maternal voice. Its methodology is therapeutic, focusing on healing the artist child through gentle, consistent practices like the morning pages. Pressfield is the drill sergeant demanding you charge the hill. Cameron is the therapist, helping you understand why you're afraid of heights. Complementary tools. Ultimately, the 2 books are not mutually exclusive, but can be seen as complementary tools for different needs and different moments in a creative life. The War of Art is the book to turn to when discipline has failed and a powerful jolt of motivation is required to force one back into action. The Artist's Way is the guide for moments when the creative spirit feels wounded, traumatized, or disconnected, and a gentle process of reconnection and healing is needed. Versus Cal Newport's Deep Work. A comparison with Cal Newport clarifies the specific problem that Pressfield is trying to solve. Different battles, different enemies. The two books are fighting different wars on different fronts. The War of Art is about winning the internal psychological battle against resistance, simply to get to the work. Its enemy is procrastination, fear, and self-doubt. Deep work, on the other hand, is about winning the external environmental and attentional battle against distraction in order to achieve a high-quality, distraction-free concentration once you have already started working. Its enemy is email, social media, and the culture of shallow work. This distinction reveals a highly effective two-step framework for creative production. The creative workflow involves two primary challenges, each addressed by one of these books. Stage 1 is initiation, which involves the struggle to overcome the internal friction of procrastination, fear, and self-doubt. This is Pressfield's domain. His tools, such as naming resistance and turning pro, are designed to solve the fundamental problem of getting one's butt in the chair. Stage 2 is execution, which involves the struggle to maintain focus and produce high-quality output in a world engineered for distraction. This is Newport's domain. His strategies such as time blocking, shutdown rituals, and the ruthless elimination of shallow work are designed to optimize the quality of the time spent in the chair. Therefore, the two books are not competitors, but powerful complements. A complete and robust creative discipline requires both: Pressfield's philosophy to conquer the internal resistance to start, and Newport's strategies to conquer the external distractions that prevent focus. Conclusion: waging your own war of art. The War of Art is a potent, paradoxical, and deeply flawed masterpiece. It has earned its enduring status not because it is a perfect guide, but because it provides a uniquely powerful psychological toolkit for reframing the fundamental struggle of creation. Its value lies less in its literal truth and more in its metaphorical power. It gives a name to the formless anxiety that plagues every creator, and in doing so, gives them a fighting chance. The book's core concepts, the personification of resistance and the call to professionalism, offer a clear, actionable path out of the paralysis of fear and procrastination. However, its power comes with significant risks. The absolutist tone, dangerous medical claims, and potentially corrosive war metaphor demand a critical and discerning reader. To engage with the book productively is to wield it as a sharp tool, not to swallow it as infallible doctrine. Therefore, the path forward for the modern creator is to wage their own personalized war of art, using Pressfield's work as a valuable but imperfect field manual. This involves a strategic approach. Embrace the core concepts. Adopt the frameworks of resistance and the professional mindset. Use them to externalize the struggle, build discipline, and hold yourself accountable. The comparative table of the amateur versus the professional should be used as a personal diagnostic guide. Use the compass. Recognize moments of intense fear and procrastination not as stop signs, but as reliable indicators of which projects are most essential to your growth. Let fear guide you toward your most important work. Interpret, don't ingest. Approach the controversial Higher Realm section not as a literal theological treatise, but as a functional metaphor. Use it to sacralize your work and connect with a deeper why that can sustain you through difficult periods, regardless of your personal beliefs. Discard the dross. Be a critical reader. Unequivocally reject the book's unscientific medical and psychological claims and its more extreme, judgmental assertions that promote an unhealthy and unbalanced life. Temper the metaphor. Use the war metaphor as a powerful catalyst to initiate action and break through inertia. However, for long-term, sustainable practice, consider tempering this aggressive stance with gentler frameworks to avoid burnout and the psychological toll of perpetual internal conflict. The ultimate message of the War of Art is that the act of creation is a battle worth fighting, and that each of us has a unique contribution to make. Pressfield's book, for all its imperfections, provides an invaluable battle plan for the first, most difficult phase of that war: showing up. The task of the creator is to take up its effective weapons, use them wisely, and leave the dangerous ones behind. As Pressfield exhorts his readers in a moment of profound clarity, creative work is not a selfish act. It's a gift to the world and every being in it. Don't cheat us of your contribution. Give us what you've got.
So, the key takeaway from the war of art is that the real battle isn't against yourself or a lack of talent, but against a clear enemy called resistance. And victory doesn't come from waiting for inspiration. It comes from your decision to turn pro and show up to do the work every single day, whether you feel motivated or not. As the author Steven Pressfield says, your creative work isn't a selfish act. It's a gift to the world. So don't deprive us of your contribution. Give us what you've got. And my question for you today is, what is the project or dream that resistance has been stopping you from starting, that you've decided to begin after watching this video? Let me know your answer in the comments below. I love reading about your experiences. If you liked this video and found it valuable, don't forget to hit the like button to support the channel. And subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you always get the latest in self-development. Thanks so much for watching, and I wish you all the best in your own personal war against resistance. See you in the next one.